Welcome back.
Mhm.
How did you find it?
Yeah, it's nice. It was nice. Let me see if I can turn my camera on. Sorry.
Your camera was on.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it was nice. It was nice. It's very calming. How
Mm.
did you find it?
Yeah, for me, I really tapped into this field of, limitless possibilities. And when I was on the walk preparing for this conversation, I was thinking, yeah, I can start like this, I could do it like this. And in the
Mhm.
meditation, I was like, okay, just what if I let everything go and allow for space to, the newness, the freshness of this moment to come through.
Mm.
And it's something like my ego was like, no, 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 you need to start the way you want it to start, not. So it's just like, yeah, trust and surrender, and just trusting like the slow, something about slowness and stillness, and trusting that it will spontaneously arise. There's something like that I'm discovering, like the slower I am, the more attuned I am, like things spontaneously arise.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And we're recording, so we're live.
Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. It was so beautiful
Yeah.
to watch you in your serenity. And actually,
Uh,
yeah, something about, I think how I want to start is with the felt sense, with the
mm.
felt sense of you. And the felt sense of you and the experience of you I have is like very soft, very like nurturing, very sweet. And it's like being with you is like, I can just, relax and just like surrender. And I'm just curious because I don't know you that well. Um,
Mm.
if like this has been your essence all the time, or has it been any different, and what was the evolution of that?
Yeah, such a beautiful question. Thank you. As I'm kind of coming back from that meditation, I can really feel it in my feet.
Mhm.
Uh, like the sense of feeling very like all of a sudden like everything's just gone woof down to my feet and it's very grounded. So
Mm.
yeah, thank you. Um, no, absolutely not. And I always think it's amazing how other people perceive the energy that we have, which can be so much different from our own internal structures.
Mm.
Um, so I love what you said then about kind of the nurturing elements, but it's taken like a long road to get there. Um, and that's definitely something that I've been working on maybe in the last 5 years or so, as I've kind of brought myself back into alignment, brought myself back into authenticity. And I don't want to just be like saying all these buzzwords because they're like fashionable, but I guess let me explain them a little bit more than
Yeah, and
just
we
the
can
buzz.
unpack
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm a neurodivergent queer woman, and that has meant that for a long time there have been many elements of me that have sat on many different levels that I may not have always been sure about. Society hasn't enabled me to be sure about. I'm also of a generation where neurodivergence wasn't understood as much as it is now. It's amazing. There's so much great conversation going on about it at the moment, about disability, about queerness, and so much acceptance, but that just wasn't there when I was growing up. So there are layers to me where that I've spent time unpacking. So like so for instance, the not good enough wound hits me hard because when I was growing up, like something really simple, like I could never copy quick enough off the board, like back in the day when we had like blackboards that the teachers had to write on, and we had to write down. Like kids
Mm.
wouldn't even imagine that now, but that's what we had. And I would never finish in time for her to put the blackboard back up. And then so that had added into my like not being good enough, or so that's my dyslexia, where I have like ADHD. I would always be like a daydreamer, or I would just be like dreaming, thinking out the window, or so therefore I was just someone that didn't pay attention, or what's the word that they used, doesn't apply herself. And then years of being told that I didn't apply myself.
Wow.
Actually, that really integrates into a deep piece of wounding that says I'm not good enough. And then as a adolescent, how that transpires is to constantly have, oh, well, I had this sense of not quite fitting in anywhere. My queerness, my neurodivergence meant that I never quite felt like I fit in. And then so as I went to I followed quite a traditional road. I got in just enough A level, just enough GCSEs to do A level, so I went and did that. And I got like a D and two E's in my A levels, but I got just enough to go to university. But like I smashed all the drugs. Like drugs, I completed that level. Everything I could take, and I did for a really long time.
Mm.
I failed a year of uni where I was just out partying all the time. Went to a different university in Derby in the middle of the country because there wasn't a party scene there. So that was the only way. I kind of took myself out. So I went to my first uni in London, took myself out and said, if I'm actually going to do this, I need to take myself away.
Mm.
So I did. And then went traveling for a couple of years, and kind of that's when I really started and I went traveling on my own, to really kind of come into myself. But even then, I remember coming back and I worked in sales. I never really had this sense of who I was. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to identify as a lesbian. This is me now in my late 20s, early 30s. So I came out as I've always known I was queer. At that time, it was under the umbrella of bisexual.
Mm.
So I came out, right, this is who I am. And so I take on kind of quite this macho role within that, because the scene was quite, so I felt I had to almost prove I was gay enough. So it meant taking on quite this macho, kind of masculine, approaching people a format, which actually isn't me. Like, I am confident, I have the warrior energy inside of me, as we all do, but I wouldn't, it's not, when there's too much one or the other out of line, it didn't feel aligned. So for a long time I didn't feel aligned. I was almost like playing this role, and almost like I was having to prove my queerness to other people because I couldn't feel it inside myself. And then I was heartbroken in my late 30s, by my then partner, who left me for someone else. And that really was the start of a really transitional journey back to me. So it's beautiful that I can hear those words from you, because it's actually that softness, coming back to that softness, and really integrating my femininity and saying, I am all of these things. I am a warrior, I am feminine, I am, I am a mother, but I don't have children, but yet I still hold that mother energy. I am the crone, and yet I am still young. I am masculine and I'm feminine. I'm all of that, and I am me. So that's kind of where I am now, kind of really coming into that space. And so it's been a long road to get here.
Wow. I love how you just went right into the deep end.
Yeah, that's me. There are no shallow chats here.
No shallow here. Apologies for my cough that's going to be sprinkled out throughout the whole conversation, since I'm recovering still. Um, wow. Wow, there were so many places where I was like, ooh, ooh, ooh. But I think what hit me the most was you didn't apply yourself. Like just this expression, I've never heard
Mm.
it before, but like it just like, oh, I felt the heaviness of it, you know. You didn't apply yourself, like you don't as I think it was through us that I discovered this notion of including yourself, right? I think it's through us,
Mm.
and it's the training that we both done for those who are listening. So yeah, it's interesting going from someone who doesn't apply themselves into, you know, someone who has to include themselves,
Mm.
and this whole journey that you went through.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I mean I could give you every school report from when I was younger, and that's literally written on every school report. And I think there was a lack of understanding at the time of ADHD. Like ADHD isn't necessarily a lack of applying oneself. It's I have an impulse-driven nervous system. So my nervous system really gets going when I've got some kind of danger, when I've got some kind of deadline, when there's something there. And that's when all of a sudden I get clarity. So, I mean, in evolutionary terms, there is a theory that said ADHD developed is an evolutionary development within our genes, because when we were in tribes, you know, coming out of Africa, you need some people who are going to have uh, who are not going to be risk averse. They're going to be more in tune with risk, who are going to, for instance, eat the new mushroom. They're going to, you know, pick the new berry that the tribe hasn't before. They're going to go and walk out into the fields to face the saber-toothed tigers, well, and go to places that are unknown, because we needed that in terms of our development of humanity to be able to spread. And that is one theory as to why ADHD has developed, because actually it has enabled us to progress. What that doesn't help for is sitting in English class copying down off a board of a teacher. You know, we weren't developed as a species to do that. So my, you know, my genome, my genetics is developed to kind of be pushing frontiers. And I guess that's kind of, I'm at the moment I'm doing research into consciousness and decision making. And you know, I've done lots of things in my life. That I run queer spaces, queer tantric spaces. I do other I have a neurodiversity podcast. There's lots of things that I do that are kind of pushing these barriers
Mm.
that have, and that actually my beautiful neurodiversity has enabled me to do that, rather than it being a disinhibitor.
Wow. It's like, you know, things that society would class as disabilities, they're actually superpowers.
Mm.
And it makes me think like everything in nature happens for a reason. Like there's nothing off. Everything is kind of have its place and in evolution, so to speak. And I love this theory, you know, of, you know, why this could
Mm.
be. Um, yeah, because we're part of nature, right? So like
Oh yeah.
we are the way they are because we are and we have to be. And it's yeah, it's powerful to hear how you're kind of shifted from like this is happening to me, or like I'm not understood, into like this is actually this is the horse that I'm riding, you know, and like channeling
Mm.
all of this into different things that you're doing.
Yeah, because I think it's so easy to kind of allow these things to run us.
Mm,
And I've really tried to come to a space where I'm working with myself rather than against myself, understanding that if I've got a deadline, I'm going to do something 20 minutes before the deadline or an hour before the deadline, depending on when the deadline is. I'm not going to be doing it a week in advance. And that's just, you know, now I can work with that. I can kind of let my world be a bit more graceful and a bit more
mm,
easeful, and you know, I'm there's much more gentleness with
mm,
myself, which allows me to be gentle with the world outside and saying, this is who I am, this is how I am, and I love myself because of that, and as well as in spite of that, you know.
mm,
And something really beautiful that you said about we are part of nature. I was walking the other day, and I was thinking about the idea of nature poverty. And I was just kind of, as you were talking, I was holding that in mind, because
Mm,
there's this idea that are we now, as a society, bereft of nature in the way that that our ancestors were, which no longer enables us to transform and evolve in the same way? And how will this mean that we'll evolve in the future? I was in like a I was in Savers, I was in a supermarket the other day and thinking, looking around, looking at all the chemicals, thinking how many chemicals there are in the products that we use. And then
mm,
I walked outside and I looked at just these bricks, concrete
mm,
everywhere. And then all the people around me. And I looked at them and everyone just looked so, in their world, so drawn. There was no laughter, no love, no joy. And I thought, actually, when I don't feel like this when I'm in the countryside, I don't feel like this when I'm surrounded by nature. I
mm,
can look around and look at the sky and the stars, and I can feel rich. And yet I'm in Savers and I feel poor. And I
mm,
wondered whether there's something in the nature poverty there, that actually not having a nature around us makes us feel poorer than we really are.
mm. Oh, wow. There's like,
Mhm.
wow, it's so potent what you're saying, and I'm just like allowing it to sink in. Nature poverty. I can see for myself that I definitely feel very disconnected and deprived if I'm not in the nature. Um, yeah, it's beyond words to even like begin to describe. It's the feeling that we get, and maybe it's, you know, what we spoke about before we started. Like in nature, there's no stimuli. Like everything is kind of in sync and in balance. And I think that's what kind of co-regulates our nervous system
Mm.
and brings us back, to our center, to the peace. Whereas when we're in anything artificial, I guess, anything man-made, um, I guess there's a certain structure, there's a certain, rules, ways of being that we need to enact in order to
Mm.
adapt. Um, that is not authentic. And nature somehow like accepts us and holds us, the way we are, because it is the way it is. So then we can be the way we are. So it's almost like, yeah, I'm just like seeing this image of like molding ourselves, when in nature we can just expand. Like there's expansiveness in nature. When we're, let's say, in the room, like I'm in the room right now, like there's a certain kind of adaptiveness, I guess, that happens unconsciously. Or I have to like know my surroundings, know my exits, because I'm in an enclosed space. So there's, I guess, a different kind of adaptation that happens, or molding myself. Or if I'm with other people, again, there's like different, thoughts that are running through my mind that I need to be a certain way, or look at, or like I want to fit in, and all of that. So yeah, it's a very powerful concept, nature poverty, and how.
Mm.
And it is true, I think. It is true. The more we're away from nature, the more we're away from ourselves.
Yeah. And I grew up in a town. I've lived in London for, I've gone traveling, but I've always come back to city. And I wonder how much of my not fitting in, not allowing myself, was because I grew up in nature poverty at a
Mm,
time with TV dinners and, the 80s, where everything was about convenience. Right. And I was very lucky, like my mum would always, cook from scratch. But it was definitely at a time where we had microwave meals that were just coming in, and we didn't know the impact of, the um what food had in it, and we were less aware, we were less conscious of those things. And so therefore is there an element of not fitting in because we are withdrawn from our natural selves, withdrawn from nature, withdrawn from, as you know, as well as all the societal elements. But is there an additional impact because we're withdrawn, or for me, where because I was withdrawn from, you know, the world around me, the world that our genes have evolved us to live in.
Mm. But now you're like, when you speak about yourself and your self-love, like I had goosebumps as you were sharing that, for someone to be so loving and accepting of oneself, like it's magnetizing. It's like I want to be with these kinds of people. And I notice people like vice versa, people want to be with me because I'm at ease, I'm at peace, I know who I am. Um, and you're still living in London, right? So what keeps you, centered and aligned and in
Mm.
your essence?
Yeah, it's great. I don't know. I'm still working on it. And I think it'll be a lifetime piece of work. I have community. And that's one of the things that I feel very strongly about, which keeps me grounded and keeps me moving forward with the work that I do. And I've built a wonderful community around me. And I think that as human beings, we are hardwired. We have a whole middle section of our brain, which is, enables us to engage with the people around us. And so one of the theories that I'm testing in the research that I'm doing is that so there's a theory that said consciousness is a byproduct of socialization. We lived in bigger tribes in effect, and because we were living in bigger communities, have become more and more conscious. We
Mm,
couldn't be completely instinctual, so if we were being completely instinctual, it would be like seafood, grab food. Can't do that
mm,
in a bigger society. So there is a theory that said consciousness is born out of that. And as
oh,
we become living in bigger and bigger societies, the society is growing bigger and bigger. We are going to have to become, this is my theory,
mhm,
more and more conscious. Think of conscious relating as an example. For instance, the way that we relate to others through the words that we use is more pronounced than ever before. Um, so my theory is the more we become ingrained in society, the more we lose nature, the more conscious we'll have to be of the others and the way we communicate and engage with people around us. But that won't necessarily, coming back to the nature poverty, that won't necessarily make us feel richer. And there's a richness of being out in the woods and in with nature that for me doesn't come from anywhere else. And there's the question: how do we integrate the two? And
mm,
I mean that's a global question. I think how do we integrate these feelings of richness that we can get from coming back to the world that that born us essentially, and as well engage with society at a whole on a much bigger level to make sure that we're communicating in a way that really allows everyone to be seen, that
mm,
it really brings everyone back to their essence
mm,
and says, I see you and I accept you because I see me and I accept me.
mm,
I don't know the answer to that.
mm. I see you and accept you because I see and accept myself. Oof.
Mm.
Wow. Yeah. Community, nature, acceptance of oneself, of each other. I think it's, when I was thinking about this podcast and the themes and myself as a human being, um, actually this morning on the walk while I was walking, I was like, everything is so fucking polished these days. Everything is so pristine. I was talking with my colleague at work yesterday about genitals, sharing with him about, my past fear of intimacy and how I would see, genitals as alien and very uncomfortable. And then saying, how I've created and built a relationship with it where I'm like, oh, it's like it's God's, genitals are God. And this adoration, and I was sharing a little bit about rituals that I've done, that are non-sexual in order to reconnect with the genitals. I just love how it went to the genitals, but I'll bring it back. Hopefully I'll bring it back if I won't lose the thread. But yeah, I guess, and he was like, ugh, genitals are disgusting, like they're ugly. And I'm like, part of me can really relate to that because I've been there. And then part of me was so sad. I'm like, he cannot relate to his genitals as, as God, as beauty, as divine. And then, going back to this conversation and this podcast and just my general contemplation on how everything is polished and how I intentionally wanted this to be not edited because I want people to experience more rawness, because through my own experience, like through ISTA training that we did, through a lot of other experiences in my life, it's like the more I can connect to this raw element of a human being, the more I can connect like with myself in that way. And to your point, loving myself, because there's the shared humanity in our rawness, that we can experience. So like I guess this desire that I have is to bring more raw into the world, because it just breaks my heart, when I look at social media and I scroll through pictures of women, and it's just like copy paste, the same lips, the same eyebrows, the same makeup. And it's like, wow, how did we get here? Like, it breaks my heart. And so, yeah, and I just want to be that invitation of like, oh, let's do more raw, let's be more real, let's reconnect, let's begin loving each other through those like disgusting and ugly moments. Like, it feels like I'm trying to articulate something like I'm feeling and I've experienced, but I don't know if it actually is coming through. But it's something around just being with someone. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I want to go there. My mind went. Anyway, it's in the experience when I get to experience someone very real and raw and vulnerable. It's like I'm like, I can be that as well, without judgment. No, okay, I'm gonna go there. But like the image came into my mind of when I was connecting to this man, and he was just like so real in the connection and so like raw, and like he was showing like, how do I say this? Like, he wasn't trying to be pretty, it was a romantic exchange. Um, but he was just like, and I was like, part of me was like, wow, you can be so free and so like ugly, and somehow this ugly was so fucking hot.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know if you want to like add something on like more color into that. I don't know if it's like fully coming out.
Oh, it's just, do you know what it reminds me of? It's like the authenticity. It's like the permission to be, unapologetically who we are in all our divine, glorious messiness, ugliness, like, and love that, and honor that rather than it, and rather than it be what society tells us. Society tells me that my grey hair that I've got isn't pretty, that actually you know, my lips might not be big enough or my eyebrows may not be perfect. But actually, that's nah, none of that matters. Really, what matters is the rawness of inside of here, the realness and the authenticity and the alignedness. I don't think that's a word, but it is
That's
now.
a new one.
Alignment of where we are. And I love what you said, you know, the magnetism of that. Because I don't know about you, but I can feel the energies of the different people who I'm talking to. So if I'm sitting with someone who is calm, I'll feel like, oh
Mm.
yeah, I'll feel calm. I'll feel into that person. I'm like, yeah, we've got this. We've got this great chat or whatever. Whereas if I'm sitting with someone who's a bit like, I'm like,
Speaking
oh,
very
something,
fast.
yeah, something's going on here. I'm not, yeah. And so you can, so it's almost like there's the feeling of being able to feel into the rawness of the authenticity and know that that is a grounded and centered place. And that, I mean, that's what it feels like for me.
Mm. Yeah.
And I love what you were saying about the, sorry to interrupt you, the genitals, because I think I went to this wonderful play a while back where and it was about essentially genital mutilation. It was about labiaplasty and the increasing numbers of women who are having their labias removed because their vaginas don't look like the pretty picture of a vagina that we all get
Oh.
to see. And wonderful. It was such a good play, and I wish I could remember the artist now. But she hung pieces of meat from her vagina as a representation of the labia, and but we are not taught to love the intimate places of us. We are not taught this unless we get it from our parents. And especially from my generation, it wasn't taught to them.
Mm.
So if we are not taught this, it's a lifelong journey of loving every inch of ourselves and really coming back to who we are and loving our genitals and loving other people's genitals and, you know, loving the grays and loving the,
Mm.
you know, all the things that society tells us that we will not be loved unless we
Mm.
have X, Y, and Z. And I think society is changing. I
Mm.
think that it's, you know, younger people coming through are definitely, you know, not thinking about it as much. They drink less, for instance, than my generation. They're more conscious and aware, but it's still there. It's not gone away, and it's a lifelong process to actually go, what is beauty? How can we reframe beauty
Mm.
to say, actually, we are beauty. All of us are beauty. We are love. All of us are love without the plastic and the, you know, all the expectations the society puts on us to look a certain way or be a certain way in order to have love, because we already have love and we already are love.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, and like from my own experience, what I'm noticing, you know, when you talk about society, it's like things are so deeply ingrained in us that we don't question them. We think like this is my opinion. You know,
Mm.
an example that I've shared a few times was from my yoga teacher training. It was mainly women, couple of men, but one sunny day, you know, sun is out, everyone's out. And some women were like on a path for a while. I was pretty much at the beginning still. And they started undressing and they're naked. I'm like, wow, they're free. And I can do that. Okay. And then I'm seeing their armpits and they're not shaved, and their legs and they're not shaved. And I'm like, ugh. And then I was like, and it like it created this paradox in my head of like, but I love these women. Like they're my friends. And then on the other side it's like, oh, it's disgusting. And you know, I started being with that. I was like, wow, what is going on here, you know? I've never actually chose that like being unshaved is disgusting. Like it's not mine. I started sitting with it. I was like, this is not mine. I never chose it. So it was like given to me. And you know, if I'm just like living life unconsciously, I'll just subscribe to that, and I'm like, ugh, I hate hair, you know. but I was like really able to be with it and explore it. And I was like, you know what? I'll just not shave myself and see, how I feel about it. And it was such a powerful experiment. I was at the beginning, I was like, ugh, and shave the legs. And then after a while, I was like, "Ugh, my legs, my hair. And I really got connected to it. And it was so beautiful. And I just liberated myself from this like societal conditioning.
Mm.
And now I'm able to be with or without. But it's like, yeah, we have so much of stuff that it's so deeply ingrained in us. It's the water that we swim that we don't even question. There's
Mm.
this, I don't know if you heard this, like a little story about uh, two small fishes, swimming in the water, and this like grandfather fish swimming. And the grandfather says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And they look at each other, they swim past, and they're like, "What is he talking about? What water?" You know? So that's the conditioning we have. That's the,
Yes.
how deeply it is ingrained. We don't see it, we don't question it. So I'm always like, yeah, passionate about pointing these things out of like, is this actually yours? Did you choose it? But yeah, how do we awaken people to the fact that not everything we think is true and it's yours? You can discover something for yourself.
Mm. I love that story, by the way. And did you get to the point where like your leg hair has got its own aura? Because I did something similar, and you can almost feel like it takes on its own aura after a while. It's brilliant.
Mm. It just
um,
becomes like a little puppy, like an animal. It's like, "Oh, my hair."
um, but then the other side of that is, why do we have to wake people up? That's not, is that our role?
Mm,
Is it everyone's own role to have their own awakening?
mm,
And that may be through something that we say, or it may not. It may be through a trauma or a disaster or a breakup or a death, or, you know, looking at climate crisis. Or I think that one of the views I hold is that, human beings are quite egocentric. We think it's our job to do everything, and actually
mm.
it's it's not our job. It's everyone's individual job to have their own individual path, is my view, and to be the best they can be on that path, to to take it with a gusto. Life is the continual remembering and forgetting, remember, forget, and the journey and the path that we weave on that. And you know and we can only be there for the journey of others. So yeah, I don't know that I'm here to support, but I'm not here to wake people up. If that happens, then great.
Wow, I think you just like liberated me on some level, because I'm like, wow. Yeah, it's like it's not my but I'm seeing how I'm taking that responsibility on, or
Mm.
like, or this yearning, this wanting. But what you're sharing here now is like, it's more like, I can just relax. I can just be me, do me, share me. And if people get inspired, they get awakened out of that. It's great. If not, it's like, it's not my role. That's very powerful. Hmm.
Should we take a breath into that?
Hmm.
Mm.
How did you come to this? Like, or has it always been present for you, or have you discovered this for yourself?
I've always been in a position where I've loved, like I was a social worker for many years, where I've loved helping and supporting people on whatever journey they're on. But ultimately, each person's journey is their own.
Mm,
And I think just over years of being, now I'm doing coaching work and working alongside people. everyone will, how we interpret the world is so different. How I interpret the world and internalize what's being said and the information that's coming to my brain, and also the feeling element of it, how I feel. I can't do that for someone else. So I can feel for me. I know how it feels for me, but I don't know how it feels for, Jack over here or Jane over here. Only Jane and Jack know. So, and that's their path to interpret that information in a way to make sense to them. And if we all are coming together and it makes sense for all of us, great, we have community. But if not, then maybe there's some community over there. And I think for me, I have this conversation quite a lot. I think sometimes we've lost the art of disagreement as well. And understanding that, where we've become so homogenized in specific ways of thinking, social media being a great example, we're all tunneled down a specific algorithm, that actually people understand the world differently depending on their own experience. That's the beauty of diversity. And who am I to say that my experience is the right way? If my experience feels like the right way to someone else, and we're on this journey together, that's great. If I tend to look to Buddhism a lot. I really like the ideas of Buddhism, but that isn't going to appeal to everyone. Another form of, lifestyle choice might appeal. So I think it's egocentric to say that, we are the way, because we're not the way. Our way is a way, everyone has their own way. And it's good to look towards others. Others will shine a light to make the steps easier, but we have to take the steps. There are lots of steps that are lit up for us wherever we look, but we have to do that ourselves. And I think that's the path that I've taken. I can see all the steps around me, and it's my choice where I choose to tread.
Yeah, I'm curious, with seeing all the steps, and also seeing different people walking different steps, and oftentimes, like, I've been there, where consciously and unconsciously, like, I subscribe to their way, because the way they're doing, and I find it so easy to just like be pushed and pulled into different directions to different ways of doing. And every time I come back to my center, I'm like, oh, it's actually my way. But there's some kind of mistrust that is there of like, because obviously it's like I am creating my own path that no one ever walked before me. Whereas there's so many predefined paths already, and everyone says, you need to do this, you need to do that, wake up at 5 a.m., like, you have to niche down. It's like so many different like stories, and yeah, it's so easy to be like pushed and pulled away into different directions. And I have to like bring myself back into, like my truth, my authenticity, and trusting that, that it's my way and it's the right way. So I'm curious, like, if you've had that or you've overcame that, and like, how do you bring yourself back into your way and trusting that?
Yeah. So that trust, that word trust. I was doing some writing yesterday, and it's hard. I don't think there's an easy way. I've not got any like miracle cure for you, I'm afraid. Like, it is the continuing remembering and forgetting and remembering of coming back to self. And for some, that getting up at 5 a.m. and following that line, that will be the right way for them. And for others, it won't be. And coming back to that internal trust, which sometimes can be really hard. It can be really hard to hear yourself, to, to hear the internal monologue, to hear the internal wisdom, and then to trust what it's saying. Wow, that's like a whole nother level of like, but so I'm not to harp on about my research, but the research that I'm doing looks at unconscious and conscious decision making. And actually, there's a theory that says, there's two theories. There's one theory that says our unconscious already knows the decisions we're going to make before our conscious mind, and then before we do the action. And there's another theory that says, actually, if you have complex decisions to make, trust the unconscious. Whereas if you've got not as complex decisions, trust the conscious. Now, you know, those theories are debated, so don't take them as absolutely golden rules. But for me, there's something in coming back to the feeling of the internal animal instinctual body. And in those moments of crisis that I've had throughout my life, because, you know, we've all had them, I've had them. It's taken me a long time to trust that internal monologue, that gut reaction, that moment that says, do it, or don't do it, or wait. And learning what that feels like, and remembering to ask the question. For most of like for me, the hardest thing is remembering to ask myself, is this right, rather than just doing it or not doing it in an unconscious fashion. Taking the time to go, okay, shall I do this thing? A leap of faith. I'd never, before I did ISTA, I hadn't known anyone that did ISTA. I just saw it on an Instagram post and I was like, oh, that looks great. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit with myself, like internal world. Shall we do ISTA? And I got back a yes. I'm like, oh, it's really expensive though. Should we do it? Oh, still yes. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It might be it might be a cult. Like, I don't know. I don't want to read it. And they're like, still do it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust this. And ISTA was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Like it opened up worlds for me. Especially, you know, meeting like-minded community who all of a sudden there's this whole group of people that think like me. And I'm like, wow, this has revolutionized my small world. Like all of a sudden my world has expanded astronomically. So I think, yeah, that process of coming back to self, of asking the question and then not allowing the buts and the wherefores with the bigger questions, but kind of then trusting in the response. And it's a lifelong journey.
It is. It is. Especially coming from years and years and years of overriding that that inner knowing. It kind of, yeah, we have to tune back into it, you know. And it's such a beautiful reminder, you know, to just like literally slow down and just ask myself, you know, is this right? Do I want to do this? And trusting, I think it's like trusting the first impulse or the first thing that comes, because the second thing that comes is the mind, you know, negotiating and analyzing, is this, you know, the right thing? So I can see, you know, how this theory is true for me in the way of, I say like, you always know, even if you don't know. It's like there's this that I've discovered for myself, this inner knowing that, as you say, before words, before the conscious mind. And yeah, the challenge is like to trust that and to not go into thinking. I mean, thinking has its place and has its beauty, but yeah, I think we're what we spoke about at the beginning before recording, I think it's like, or no, even recording, you were saying, you know, going to the extreme of, you know, I am this identity, but just generally going into extreme of anything. And I think we're we live in times where we're really gone extreme into thinking and analytical and science, and we forgot the our nature and our knowing and our wisdom.
Mm.
So yeah.
And I also think that, there is genetically, there's a genetic influence as well. If I'm very privileged to be a white woman, but if I was not a white woman, let's say I was a person of color with years of slavery behind me, the genetic impact of all of that, don't trust who you are, don't be who you are, the um the trauma, the genetic impact of the trauma that comes with the atrocities of the past, and the distrust then of the self. I mean, that's a whole nother level of unpicking that has to happen, I want to say rewilding our inner landscape, of re-understanding who we are.
Mm.
um and and then really kind of trusting in the strength of that. um yeah, so there's a lot there of just in that word of trust.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. Rewilding our inner landscape. So beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Privilege and yeah, you're sharing these things and I'm like, I have no fucking clue if I'm honest. Or like I don't think about it. I just think from my
Mm.
own little world. Um, there's obviously different contexts that people come from and different challenges they face. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, last time we spoke we had a conversation around masculinity, and I think there's a crisis of masculinity now at the moment. And I think that there's a, a distrust of what masculinity stands for, both from women, from men themselves. And I think there's a whole piece of work that's having to go into really supporting us as human beings, coming back to ourselves and really kind of as I said, rewilding that landscape to know that we're kind of in that aligned space of stepping forward with integrity. I think integrity in this world is such an important word. For me, it's one of the most important words. How do I step out into the world with integrity in what I do, in relationships, in work, with family, with friends? And how do I know that I have integrity, even though knowing I'm not perfect, I'm going to get things wrong all the time. But how do I still do it with integrity and show up in that way and says, I'm here, I've done the best that I can do, and I haven't got this right, or I have got this right, and but really owning that.
Mm. Yeah. Integrity and being our word. I think our we kind of lost the owning of that, like owning our word, owning our promises, owning what we say we will do. And I think that
Mm.
that's what like chips away at our sense of self, at the trust in self.
Mm.
Um, it is a big process for me. It has been as well in the past year, maybe also to really like claiming back the power through my actions and like the alignment and integrity. If I say I'll do something, I'll do it, or I will recommit. But it's like, wow, it's another kind of entry into, you know, um, authenticity and yeah, trust of self. Because the
Mm.
way I interpret is like every time we say we'll do something, we don't do it and we just let it slip. It's like it just chips away and chips away and chips away. And then we see ourselves as someone who just like says things to say and not follows through on them.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a powerful also thread
Yeah.
to weave into the authenticity and self-expression and connection to self.
Yeah, and there's something with authenticity and trust as well. If I'm asking my inner world, what should I do? And it gives me an answer and then I don't do it, there there's no integrity there. There's no,
Yeah.
you know, trust, and you lose that some of that. So it's our own inner world integrity as well as, you know, the words that we speak and the actions that we do. Um, you know, I am absolutely someone who regularly overcommits. I know this about myself. So my integrity is like I'm pulling it, reining it back in, and only committing to the things that I know I can commit to. So I'm not letting people down, so that
Mm.
I feel like, but that's been a lifelong work, you know, and so that I can feel like actually with the people that I am with, I can be really present,
Mm.
you know, whether that's my mom, whether that's my best friend, whether that's someone I'm working with, actually then I can feel like I can be really with them because I feel like I have integrity in that moment, rather than I've overcommitted to all these other things. I'm sure there's something I forgot and blah, 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 blah.
Mm. 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 Yeah. Wow. So I think we can wrap this up.
Mm.
I think it's been a lot packed in, a lot of juice and food for thought. Definitely for me as well. Um, yeah, it's been great. It's been great to be with you again and to
Mm.
yeah, to share the space and um, yeah, feeling very grateful.
Thank you. I've loved it. Thank you for
Mm,
allowing me the space to, yeah, just talk some of my thoughts. And yeah, it's been lovely being with you again. Yeah, thank
mm,
you.
you're welcome. Yeah, I feel like there has been a lot of like you would talk, 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 and then like it's like a bomb. It's like, and I'm like, wow, yeah. So thank you for, yeah. I'm just really grateful for how open you are, and you're just throwing yourself into like there's no like I can just play with you so expansively and speak to you, and there's like I don't need to like watch myself or think. You're just like you're throwing yourself into it. So I'm really acknowledging you for that and appreciating your raw, real, and vulnerable self-expression, and for being a permission for others as well to be that too.
Thank you. That's so kind. Oh, thank you. I feel so loved right now. Feel
That's
so
how I feel.
seen. Thank you.
That's how I feel in your presence.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Thank you. I'm giving you big screen hugs.
Big screen hugs. Okay. Let me stop this.